it's been a minute since we talked about good old CM Punk, but honestly, I can't get any wrestling content in without somebody bringing it up. So we're going to address this one last time, and I think I'll be done talking about it unless something major happens. So, to start with, let me just say this. I don't care what he chooses to do right now. That's entirely on him. There are talks of him potentially going to WWE. I've seen some really funny memes flying around that there'll be a match with him and Stone Cold at WrestleMania. And my first question is, do you really think Stone Cold would even want to do that? Especially with how like Punk and like the history he's had with the company, and it's coming out now that he wasn't exactly like one of the greatest guys there to work with. But I digress. So now they're talking about, why AEW is hurting without Punk. And honestly, I asked the question, is it really hurting? I argue it's hurting, but not really in a way you might understand. Let me just start by saying this. AEW is hurting as far as like sales, because the one thing that they're not doing is they're not being overly transparent with the fans as to like what's going on behind the scenes. Now, that doesn't mean that they need to say every little thing that happens behind closed doors, but the whole thing with Punk really needed to be addressed up front by Khan to the fans and let them know what's going on.
Thank you. Goodbye.
My phone just yelled, my car just yelled at me. Anyway, so the question, I'm trying to find a good angle. So the question remains, what the big deal was everyone talking about this? Well, it's very simple, because he was with AEW, and it was 7 years since he stepped into a wrestling ring last. So it's a big deal. He was with the company for a year, and then everything just started going downhill. I'm not going to sit here and talk about what happened behind closed doors. All there is just rumors, other wrestlers coming out and talking about their personal opinions on the matter, what they said the locker room was like. I'm not there. I can't comment on it. For all I know, these people could just be over-exaggerating or making it up. But I will comment that since Punk essentially just showed up on some MMA program as one of their broadcasting announcers, I think it's very safe to say that he's probably done with wrestling. There have been comments made from people close to Punk that he is done. He is not coming back. He's tired of dealing with the politics of wrestling, although I'd argue after his outburst at the all-out media scrum that he loves to play the politics game, because I have a feeling he thought he was going to come out of that thing without any blemishes or any kind of heat with anyone, solely because of his name. You had a lot of people like Chris Jericho come out and say that just his presence, it kind of cast like this dark cloud over the locker room. He was someone who clearly knew his worth and definitely came off a certain way to a lot of people. And at the end of the day, I think it'd be better if he just didn't do wrestling. I mean, he's in his 40s. He's still very injury prone. He can wrestle, but I don't think that he can wrestle the same way that he did 10 years prior. It's very clear that it's taking a toll on his body. He had a lot of injuries when he was in WWE. The injuries were starting to stack up in AEW. So there's really no reason for him to even get back into wrestling. Does that mean he should stay away? No, not necessarily. I could see him maybe being like the mouthpiece for someone, or maybe being a commentator down the line. But as far as wrestling, I think it might be best for him just to be done. The drama factor, the negativity from what happened from the all-out media scrum, the fact that he's someone who I think right now, the more we hear from, the worse off it is. And it just might be better if, He just kind of like what Brendan Fraser did. Like he didn't want to deal with the politics of a lot of these places, so he kept his distance. He worked on his own passion projects, and he focused on the work that meant most to him without surrounding himself by the people that were ultimately negatively affecting his livelihood. So, with that said, all these articles talking about how AEW needs Punk. No, they don't need Punk. They don't. Punk needed AEW because where else is he going to go? He ain't going to go back to WWE. He's made it very clear where he stands with Triple H. And I don't think Triple H is going to want to bring him back, knowing that he's probably going to be more of a head case than he was 7+ years ago. He ain't going to go to Impact. That's a dying promotion. If I ever saw one, people will argue and say, no, it's still relevant. It is to a... Yeah, if you like your C shows, then sure. But, like, right now, it's very safe to say that, like, as far as, like, massive promotions, you got WWE, which is the sitting on top of the throne comfortably. You have AEW, which I'd say is their second biggest commercially aired wrestling product in the United States. It actually has a massive TV deal. You have other promotions like Impact and NWA, which are I think they're subscription based only, or they're borderline almost on free television. And then once you get overseas, then we're starting to talk about your New Japan, which is like the other big kid on the block, but it doesn't get nearly as much recognition as it deserves. So, with all of that being said, I think it just might be better off if people just drop the whole thing. It's not going to do anyone any better. AEW and Punk are trying to work out the terms to a release. They want to buy out the rest of his contract. There's reports that Punk is not making it simple because he doesn't, there's parts of it he doesn't like the non-compete clause or various NDAs. Who knows? Again, I'm not in the room having these discussions. But I will say that once it's done and he's officially done with AEW, I think it's time to officially move on. AEW is trying to do like a soft reset, and right now I think it is heading in a good direction. I will say the other thing they need to address on AEW is their very mediocre booking of mid-card titles. We're finally seeing something happen with the All-Atlantic title, although it's a shame that we had to see it just now recently with Orange Cassidy and not so much with Pac, which I'm like, that's crazy. It's almost like having that title is useless. But I do like the work the trios are doing, or the Death Triangle is doing with the trios titles, and that should be an awesome match with the Elite. But the other issue is the interim title nonsense, and thankfully AEW dodged a bullet on that one. They didn't do any AEW interim title nonsense after Punk had his issue with the scrum and then the locker room fight that happened afterwards. They did a tournament. Jon Moxley was crowned the winner, and it was done. The same could not be said, though, with Thunder Rosa when she had to vacate, when basically the same thing happened when Punk got injured the first time, where Tony Khan doesn't want to vacate titles. He just wants interim titles, and the people don't want interim champions. Well, what does it mean? Because it means that whoever holds the interim title, everyone's going to look at as inferior. It's good. They're the placeholder title. They're just there. That's all it is. I hate interim titles. It makes no sense. If there was a way to craft it in the storyline, I'd be interested to hear what they have to say. But there is no reason to just have interim championships. Thunder Rosa gets injured. Fine. She vacates the title. They have a tournament to decide who's the new champion. If you're going to have a ranking system, stick to the ranking system. If you're going to gloat about wins and losses, make the wins and losses mean something. Don't just have them hold on to the title and then allow an interim champion to hold another title. And then when the other champion comes back, then they have like, we're gonna put put both titles together, I'm like, yeah, the idea of mending two titles is interesting, except for the fact when you realize the other one is literally just holding the belt because they didn't want to take it off the injured champion. And in any other sport, if you are like in boxing and MMA, last I checked, if you're not able to defend your titles, you don't hold them. So stop with the interim title nonsense. I'd say that's the one thing hurting Toni Storm right now. Good talent, but the fans are not behind her as much as they are the likes of Britt Baker, especially Jamie Hayter. She's getting over big time. Toni Storm has just fallen into that trap of middle of the road babyface champion. She came in the company to and everyone loved it, but like she really hadn't done anything of note since. I'd argue they're doing more now with the TBS title with Nyla Rose and Jade Cargill than they're doing anything with Toni Storm. And I think people are just expecting Storm to vacate. Like, they're going to have her lose the title to Jamie Hayter because she's the crowd favorite. And I think we're probably going to see a feud with Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter since they're best buds. Which would be wise because if the fans are super behind Jamie Hayter, they're probably going to want a bit of a babyface turn from her away from Britt. We'll see. So those are my thoughts on that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I personally think it's time to get away from Punk. Let AEW speak for itself and stop worrying about what X talent can come in to raise the company. Because if the company can't do it without putting it on the shoulders of someone else, especially in their 40s, who's injury prone and has a history of having a bad attitude, then I hate to say it, the company's not going to last. So I'll see you in the next one.